Part 13 of the Military Journals of Two Private Soldiers, 1758-1775. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by F.N.H. The Military Journals of Two Private Soldiers, 1758-1775, by Abraham Tomlinson. Part 13. The 13. Being Sunday, we went to hear Mr. Willard,
Joseph Willard, D.D., who was made President of Harvard College in December 1781. He died in New Bedford in 1804, at the age of 64 years.
And after meeting, our men went to entrench down at the George Tavern, and about break of day they got home. 14. There was nothing remarkable. I went upon fatigue down to the George Tavern. 15. 2 o'clock this afternoon, when the Lobsters,
a nickname given to the British regulars on account of their red suits. They were so called in England as early as the time of Queen Anne,
fired on our guards, which was returned by our Roxbury fort. The firing was continued for some time, but how much to their damage we don't know. One of our men was slightly wounded. Their firing was from a floating battery, and it is thought would have killed 1 or 2 men if they had not lain down, for the ball passed within 4 foot of our barrack. The night passed without any alarm. The 16. This day they fired at our main guard, but no material damage was done. The remaining part of their malice seemed to be postponed to a future season. Our American guard kept their ground, and the night passed without any alarm, etc., etc. The 17. About 9 o'clock the enemy fired upon our main guard and fatigue men. They threw 4 balls and 2 bombs, and one of the balls struck 2 guns which belonged to the main guard, and the men had them on their shoulders, but did not hurt them much. The 18. Behold their spite this morning. Before the sun rise the enemy fired at our working party on the neck. This side of the George Tavern our riflemen fired at them, and it is thought killed 2 of them. But notwithstanding all their firing of balls and bombs through some of them came so near that it could hardly be called an escape, yet there was not 1 man wounded on our side. 1 bomb was thrown in the evening, but did no damage. One of the enemy came to our sentries, and is now in our guard-house. The 19. I went upon fatigue. The morning began with firing from the wicked enemy at our guard, but did no hurt. In the afternoon they riflemen fired at the enemy, and they enemy at them, and they wounded one of the riflemen in the foot slightly, but what damage we did them is uncertain. Let this suffice for a short account of the transactions of the 19 day. The 20. I went upon the main guard at night. Our boats went up within gunshot of the common.
The large park known as Boston Common extended down to the water's edge before the flats were filled in,
and alarmed them by firing several guns, and then returned without any loss on our side. The 21. Nothing remarkable happened this day. At night one of the enemy deserted and came to us. The 22. We paraded. Nothing remarkable. I went down to the picket. The 23, 24. Nothing remarkable. The 25. A flag of truce came out of town, but for what I don't know. The 26. This morning there was a man ran away from the floating battery. The 27. Being Sunday, but they make such a firing over at Bunker's Hill that it seems to be more like the King's birthday than Sunday. But what success they have had we are not able to determine. But we heard they had killed 2 men and wounded 3 or 4 more.
About 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, the 27th, the British opened a heavy cannonade from Bunker's Hill, where they had built a strong redoubt, and from a ship and floating battery in Mystic River. The firing was directed upon the American works on Winter, Prospect, and Ploughed Hills. They continued to bombard these works daily until the 10th of September.
The 28. But they still hold up their firing at Bunker's Hill. Nothing more remarkable this day. The 29. I went upon the picket down to the George Tavern, and the enemy fired several small arms at us, but did no damage. The 30. Very rainy, nothing extraordinary this day. The 31. Nothing extraordinary this day, only it was rainy at night. Lieutenant Foster and 4 men went down to the picket.
There was a famous tree in Boston, under which the patriots had often held meetings since the time of the Stamp Act excitement. On that account it was called the Liberty Tree. It was a noble elm, and stood at the corner of the present Washington and Essex streets. On the 31st of August 1775, the British cut it down, with no apparent motive but the indulgence of petty spite. An eye-witness of the event says, after a long spell of laughing and grinning, sweating and swearing and foaming, with malice diabolical, they cut down a tree, because it bore the name of Liberty. A Tory soldier was killed by its fall. A poet of the day wrote, "A Tory soldier on its topmost limb, the genius of the shade looked stern at him, and marked him out that same hour to dine, where unsnuffed lamps burn low at Pluto's shrine. Then tripped his feet from off their cautious stand, pale turned the wretch, he spread each helpless hand, and spread in vain, with headlong force he fell, nor stopped descending, till he stopped in hell."
Septem. The 1. This morning, very early, just past 1 o'clock, the enemy began to fire from their breastwork and their floating battery, which occasioned an alarm. Their firing seemed to be at our main guard and picket. They fired a number of guns and threw several bombs, and they were permitted to kill 2 men. The one belonged to Colonel Huntington's regiment,
Colonel Jebediah Huntington, of Norwich, Connecticut. The British now seemed determined to make a general assault upon the besiegers, and a heavy cannonade was opened simultaneously upon the Americans at Roxbury and in the vicinity of Cambridge.
and the other belonged to Colonel Davidson's regiment, and one of the riflemen was slightly wounded. But see the providence of God in it. When 600 or 700 men were before the mouths of their cannon, there were but 2 men killed. We should not have thought it strange if they had killed 20, considering the situation that they were in. 2 of the regulars' sentries deserted about an hour before the firing began. This was the smartest firing that ever has been in this campaign. In the afternoon they fired upon our fatigue party, but did no damage. Also, about sunset, there were several guns fired on board the ships. There were several ships came into the harbour. Thus far the proceeding of the one day. The 2. I went down to the right hand of the burying place, and we had not been there long before we were ordered off, and the cannon began to play upon the enemy from Roxbury Fort on the hill, and the field pieces from the breastwork in the thicket. The occasion of our men's firing upon them was this. They had advanced about 30 or 40 rods this side of their breastwork on the neck, and were entrenching there.
They threw up a slight breastwork a little in advance of their lines on the neck, and not far from the George Tavern.
They fired several guns at us, but did no damage. In the afternoon we went down to our work again, expecting every moment when they would fire at us, but they never fired one gun in the afternoon. At night there was a platform carried down to the thicket in order to mount a cannon there. Nothing more remarkable to-day. The 3. Being Sunday, we turned out about day and went to our alarm post, and it rained, and we came home, and John Coleman drank 3 pints cider at one draught. Nothing more remarkable this day. The 4. We turned out this morning before day, and went to our alarm posts. Nothing remarkable this day. At night I went upon the picket down to Lamb's Dam.
Lamb's Dam was between Roxbury and Dorchester. There the Americans completed a strong work on the 10th of September, and mounted 4 18-pounders.
Nothing more remarkable. The 5. Nothing remarkable, only Benjamin McLean sent home 10 letters at one draught by Lieutenant Bacon, and Lieutenant Foster had liked to have been put under guard for playing ball. The 6. Nothing remarkable this day. At night our men went down below the George Tavern for a safe guard for the sentries. The 7. We turned out early this morning and went to our alarm post, and had a smart
skirmish
with no enemy. And this day I went upon the creek guard. Several ships sailed out of the harbour. Old White was buried, and there was much joy.
We cannot explain this local illusion.
The 8. Came of the creek guard, and nothing remarkable happened. Only the enemy fired at our fatigue party, but did no damage. At night upon the door guard. The 9. In the morning the enemy fired upon our fatigue party, but did them no damage. In the afternoon I went upon fatigue. At night our men carried several cannon down into the thicket to the breastworks there.
The breastworks in the thicket were the Roxbury lines of fortifications in advance of the fort.
End of Part 13. Recording by FNH. Please visit www.bookranger.co.uk.